Slavery was abolished in the United States in 1865 with the passing of the 13th Amendment. But the truth is, slavery still exists today in the form of human trafficking. People are abducted, bought, and sold for the purpose of exploitation. 2.4 million people across the globe are victims of human trafficking at any one time. But this statistic does not reflect the real problem because it doesn't represent all the people who have gone through the experience. Human trafficking is a horrific crime, and no human today should have to experience this. This is why the U.S. government should start doing more to combat human trafficking. Human trafficking is defined by the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime as the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons by means of threat or use of force or other forms of coercion, of abduction, fraud, deception, the abuse of power or of a position of vulnerability, or of the giving or receiving of payments or benefits to achieve the consent of a person having control over another person for the purpose of exploitation, which includes the exploitation of the prostitution of others or other forms of sexual exploitation, forced labor or services, slavery or practices similar to slavery, and servitude or the removal of organs. Traffickers primarily target women and girls affected by poverty, lack of education, unemployment, discrimination, and lack of economic opportunity in the country of origin. The low social status of women in many countries has contributed to this. Traffickers lure in women and children by tricking them into thinking that they are going to do work in the city to raise money for their family. 80% of victims are trafficked as sex slaves, and 17% are trafficked to perform forced labor. Victims are sometimes forced through physical violence to engage in sex acts or perform slave-like labor. Types of force are like rape and other forms of sexual abuse, torture, starvation, imprisonment, threats, and psychological abuse. This exposes victims to serious health risks, such as deadly diseases, including HIV and AIDS, and sometimes they are worked or physically beaten to death. Every country in the world is affected, whether as a country of origin, transit, or destination for victims. The United States, which is principally a transit and destination country for trafficking victims, has 14,500 to 17,500 people trafficked into this country annually. Trafficking is a global issue, which creates many obstacles. The U.S. can't make laws for other countries, which is why we need to do more right here at home. Trafficking is a violation of laws of rape, labor and immigration codes, kidnapping, slavery, false imprisonment, assault, battery, pandering, fraud, and extortion. It is written in the Victims of Trafficking and Violence Protection Act of 2000 that existing legislation and law enforcement in the U.S. and other countries are inadequate to deter trafficking and bring traffickers to justice, failing to reflect the gravity of the offenses involved. No comprehensive law exists in the U.S. that penalizes the range of offenses involved in the trafficking scheme. Instead, even the most brutal instances of trafficking in the sex industry are often punished under laws that also apply to lesser offenses, so that traffickers typically escape deserved punishment. In fact, only 10% of police stations in the U.S. have any protocol to deal with trafficking. A girl from Seattle had been selling her services as an escort online at an advertisement website. The ad had said she was 18 years old, but she wasn't. She had run away at 15, gone back home, and run away again. An undercover police officer finally caught her in a pimp, but she was not the same. She spoke different, she looked different, they had cut and dyed her hair and bought her new clothes, says the girl's father. She had been sold online for sex for 3 months. After this case, the Washington State Legislature has passed a bill that requires websites to obtain documentation that escorts advertised are at least 18 years old. This law is the first of its kind in the country and is a step in the right direction. $32 billion is being earned each year by criminals running human trafficking networks. A UN ambassador against human trafficking said, "Modern-day slavery is only bested by the illegal drug trade for profitability." However, very little money and political will is being spent to combat trafficking. The best course of action is to raise awareness of human trafficking to U.S. citizens. Many people are not aware of the risk and how at risk they are every day. They need to be told the safety precautions to take to try their best at avoiding becoming trafficked and to be able to recognize people who are being trafficked. This is the best thing to do Because if more people become aware and realize how at risk they are and take the precautions necessary to not become a victim, the number of victims will decrease. Imagine your mother, sister, or best friend was kidnapped and sold into slavery. Now imagine if they had been informed of the risk they were in and had been able to escape from their attacker. This is what my plan will achieve. Because more people will be aware of the risk and know how to prevent themselves from being taken, eventually the number of trafficking victims will be nothing compared to what they used to be. Human trafficking is a grave violation of human rights, and only 1 out of 100 victims are rescued from this horrendous crime. This problem isn't going to go away on its own, and it's time for our government to step up and begin doing more to combat it. The first and most effective step will be to raise awareness, because according to the International Organization for Immigration, prevention is better than a cure.